Hi, welcome to Silicon Beach. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoins, and I am with the founder of MarketWire and Social Radius. He's also the co-founder of BitAngels. So tell us a little bit about how you got into BitAngels and what you're up to these days.
Sure. So I have long been interested and through my businesses promoting virtual currencies, going all the way back to the video game era, and Entropia Universe was a competitor of Second Life, and so we did work with them in the early 2000s and got a lot of attention when they would do things like sell a virtual island for $25,000, and as the numbers got bigger, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, why would somebody pay $50,000 for an island in the middle of cyberspace? Well, because you can play games on it and they'll rent it out. And so it was very interesting, and a lot of the people who started those companies saw a time when that would become a huge currency. As we know, Second Life and Entropia Universe and a lot of the other video game-based currencies never really got that big. When I first heard about Bitcoin, I thought, okay, another video game, gamification type based currency. I didn't realize until much more recently that it's not a virtual currency, it's a digital currency. And to me, the difference is a virtual currency is something that acts like a currency within a closed environment, such as a video game. And a digital currency is currency.
You need that platform to get into in order to.
And it's only that, more importantly, it's only valuable within that world. So I always thought that virtual currency had an inherent problem in that if the popularity of Second Life goes away, so does the value created within Second Life or Entropia Universe or any other video game 3D avatar-based world. If it's not popular, whereas money is always popular. And when I did more research on Bitcoin earlier this year, so I am pretty new to the game, I was just a fast learner, I found that indeed it's not a virtual currency, it's a digital currency. So it's a currency that can be used worldwide, and what I liked also about it is that it's simultaneously a currency, a commodity, and a micropayment mechanism. And any of those three are valuable. I went to the first Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin 2013, just this past May, because I had a client from the virtual currency world, Brock Pierce, who's another Silicon Beach resident and a serial entrepreneur, and he was getting ready to launch a Bitcoin company. He decided at the last moment not to launch it at that show. We're representing that company that's going to be launching shortly. But he said, you should go anyway because I guarantee you'll be the only PR guy in the room and you'll be able to meet the entire industry all in one shot. And I looked at the site, and he said there had never been a conference for Bitcoin that had more than 100 people. This one was expecting 1,000 people. And I looked, and I was intrigued that it was in the exact room that the first internet world was in. So exact room that the first internet world was in 1994. It's like the smallest room you can rent in the San Jose Convention Center. Yeah. And 10 by 10 tables. And I went there and literally was able to meet everybody in the Bitcoin world in one day, just like in 1994, April of 1994. You could go and, there's a 10 by 10 booth for Lycos and Yahoo and all these, startup, actually Yahoo was a year later, but, all these little tiny companies that a couple of years later were gigantic. So the inspiration for BitAngels was, I went there, just got excited about Bitcoins, went around and met all sorts of people the first day. The head of CoinDesk, which had just Coinbase, which had just received $5 million in funding 2 weeks before the show, and they're less than a year-old company, and they're growing at 15% a week in revenue, and they got funded by Union Square Ventures, the same guys that funded Twitter and Tumblr. They were there with the CEO in front of a 10 by 10 booth handing out t-shirts. And so at the cocktail party that night, because again, it's a small show, it's 1,000 people, although I noticed a lot of the same people who were at that first internet world. And some of them had actually flown in, not only to Silicon Valley, but in some cases to the United States to attend that show. The gentleman who started Rise was at that show. He flew in from Panama.
That's good sign you're on the right path.
Yeah. Brewster Kahle, who started Alexa, who was at the first Internet World show. We were harking how the similarities between the shows. He said the first internet world looked like high school science projects. And this one was also sort of like, hey, let's put on a show. We've got Bitcoins, right? And so there was a cocktail party that evening on a rooftop in downtown San Jose. And I met David Johnston, who was there, serial entrepreneur, young guy, still in his 20s. He's on like his fifth company. He started his first company when he was 16, sold it when he was 19, raised venture capital when he was like 20 for biotech companies. So really bright guy, serial entrepreneur. And he got big into Bitcoins about 6 months earlier. And that's when they were still $8-10. And he just literally started buying Bitcoins, as many as he could every day, and had an algorithm of like when to buy and when to sell. So he got all of his costs out and still accumulated quite a few Bitcoins. And which we're both in agreement that that's still a strategy that works, because we don't think that 140 is the largest it's ever going to get, since it's still such a small percentage of even e-commerce worldwide, much less the $100 trillion value of currency and commodities. We're at about $1.5 billion right now for the total value of Bitcoins, up from 10,000 3 years ago.
Wow, and we're halfway there to the 21 million cap off, right?
Well, but that's over the next 100 years.
Oh, it takes that long.
That's over the algorithm was put so that you had an incentive of people to mine, so you didn't have to have middlemen doing transactions. The miners actually, as part of what they earn Bitcoins for, is they validate the blocks and provide the infrastructure. And they make it as it's expected to grow in value. They also have the algorithm that as it gets more popular, it makes it harder and harder to earn a Bitcoin. But there'll still be reasons. So in other words, if it takes you 100 times as long to earn a Bitcoin and maybe 100 times more power in your machine, but the Bitcoins are worth $100,000, there's still going to be people who are going to want to earn them that way. So I'm at this party and I run into David Johnston, and serial entrepreneur from Austin. Really bright guy, and I'm noting, and he's noting, that it's interesting how at this first ever Bitcoin conference of any size, the first one that wasn't just techies and libertarians and nerds and hackers, that within a few weeks beforehand, very large venture capital firms announced investments, and there's a ton of companies with ideas about what else they can do to build up the Bitcoin infrastructure. And there were no real angels out there. It was basically bootstrap until you can find someone to give you $5 million because you've proven yourself. And there were other people doing sort of crowdfunding in China and things like that. But I noted that there really was no, sort of angel groups specializing in Bitcoins, just like there are ones specializing in digital media or in biotech. We have a client in the East Coast called BitAngels that just does biotech investments. And so David, without stopping a second, said, "Why don't we start one?" And I didn't have any answer other than, okay, why don't we think about that? And I came up with the name BitAngels while we were having a beer on the rooftop in downtown San Jose. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll post a note on Reddit, because there's a subreddit on Reddit about Bitcoins that's grown from, I think it was under 100 at first, and now it's like in the thousands.
It's large.
Yeah. And he said, and I know a number of people personally who got into Bitcoins pretty early, and their big concern is they think the biggest threat to Bitcoins is not having the infrastructure to be able to grow with the demand. And that he believed that that you would have seen Bitcoins jump way higher than $260 and not crash back down to, I think it went down to 10 before it went back up to 120 within all about a month, if you had someplace other than just Mt. Gox to buy it. And of course, within weeks, Coinbase made it a lot easier. There's other networks now. Obviously, some of the regulation we're going to talk about makes it more difficult in certain areas until they figure out what regulations are in place. It's moving faster than the regulators' ability to sort of like keep pace with what questions they want to ask. But we've seen this before. We've seen this with PayPal and Square. So he said, I know people in the Bitcoin world who got in early. Let me go and see if some of them might want to become angels and invest in Bitcoin companies that will be insurance on your Bitcoins, because you've got now places to secure the, you need an eBay, you need a PayPal, you need all these different things, just like you needed for the internet to grow. You needed Google and Amazon. You couldn't just have kind of hackers and universities. So same thing with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so he said, I think I can get 4 or 5 people to show up for lunch tomorrow, and we'll talk about starting this group. 35 people showed up.
Oh, well, nice.
And it included Bitcoin Jesus, Roger Vera. It included Vinny Lingham, the CEO of Gift.
Yeah.
It included Jared Kenna, the founder and CEO of Trade Hill. All three of whom then joined our sort of founding board. And then we had about 30 other people, and we put together a structure and decided that it would be global in nature. And unlike the typical angel group that meets for lunch or dinner once a month, and it takes months for them to go through due diligence, and they have one due diligence meeting a month, and everybody gets together for drinks or whatever, and it's just very slow. And we decided that by having global due diligence, we would be able to go and you'd submit your idea or your business plan on the site. David Rose donated the use of Gust, which is an angel platform that he sells to angel groups because he's really into what we're doing. And he's joined the group. And, we're now actually doing pitches weekly. So we usually have 2 or 3 new companies pitching a group of BitAngels weekly. That is done live through GoToMeeting or through Google Hangouts.
Okay.
And then it's cached. And we've only announced one funding, but we've been involved in 5 fundings thus far.
Yeah.
And we get involved in a couple of ways. So there are ones that we're the lead investor in, and those are usually very early stage companies. And some cases, just somebody who needs to raise some money to quit their day job and pursue, what they put together sort of in their spare hours. So that's your classic kind of, seed investment.
Yeah.
And those typically are going to be, putting in $25,000, $50,000, $100,000. And again, we fund in Bitcoins. And most of these Bitcoin companies, they appreciate that they don't have to go in and then buy Bitcoins with cash, and they have them in Bitcoins, and ideally the Bitcoins that they have sitting in their funding are appreciating.
Nice.
Even if they're volatile
Yeah.
somewhat, they're still appreciating over time. And then obviously investors are just hoping that when they get a return that it's larger than what just keeping in Bitcoins would have been. And so the winners it should be, certainly.
Thank you so much for all your information today. I think that there'll be a few more interviews in the future. I'd like to keep up to date with Michael and what he's doing with BitAngels and the Bitcoin world in general. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.